my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. Just quickly before we get into talking about March releases, I haven't had a chance to talk about Realmathon on my channel quite yet. There will be videos coming in the future, definitely my TBR, maybe a recommendations video, and then lots of reading sprints because I am co-hosting Realmathon this year. I was so excited when Cassidy asked me to do it. I am Team Creation, so please join us on Team Creation, especially if you have a lot of blue books on your TBR and you're an animal lover and have books with animals on the covers, because those are ways to get bonus points. But I'm going to leave a link to Cassidy's announcement video down below with all the rules and everything you need to know. Join us on Discord, join Team Creation. There are bookmarks. One second. Look at this mug that I made. This is my first time making like a mug from scratch. The glaze on it didn't work very well, but I'm actually pretty happy with this, and I'm keeping my bookmarks in here. I think these are probably sold out by the time I put this video up, but I'm just gonna have to show you the quality of these. Cassidy sent those to all the co-hosts, and I have another one, but it's in a book that I'm using now, and that is part of her Patreon. So I will link her Patreon down below too. One of the tiers, she does design bookmarks and she sends them to all of her patrons who are part of that tier. It's just amazing. I could gush about Cassidy all day long, but I will leave everything you need to know about Realmathon down below. I'm also wearing the shirt that she designed because of course she has to go all out and has merch. It's super comfortable. I'll show you a picture of the back as well. There's a ton of colors. If you order now, it might take a while. You won't get it at the start of March, but I'm gonna wear this all the time, so it doesn't matter. It's a good memory of the readathon. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about March releases. There are quite a few, a wide variety of genres this month. Nothing that I've read beforehand, and just not a lot of pre-order campaigns this month, at least not ones that I could find. So if I miss any, let me know down below, but we have a few. I'm starting to include pre-order campaigns in these videos in case these are books you want to pre-order and you don't know that there are ways to get goodies from the publisher and the author. I'll leave everything you need to know linked down below for that. But let's dive into it. Some interesting titles coming out in March. I have one book coming out on March 1st, and this is a Gothic title. I love Gothic stories, and it is The Bride of Death by F.M. Aiden. And apparently this is for fans of Uprooted, which I'm not a fan of, but I get the vibes, and The Bear and the Nightingale, which is one of my favorites ever, but I know exactly what they're going for when they say that. And it says that it's an adult debut that follows the journey of a young woman who seeks to defeat death himself and save her village from his torment. We're following a character named Zirin, and she's living a simple, quiet life. She tends to the gardens at the temple, but one day her best friend is acting strangely, and everybody in the town and the village is spreading rumors that he has been possessed by a demon. And as time goes by, he's acting more and more strange, and she realizes that she has to help him. And she quickly learns that the demon that is possessing him is actually like the Lord of the Dead. And in order to get power to stop him, because she's powerless, she has to marry him. And in order to marry him, she has to complete 3 impossible tasks. So it's a fantasy romance. I'm wondering if we get like a love triangle between her best friend and the Lord of the Dead. I could get into that for sure. I love a little competition, some impossible tasks. Sounds great. I love Gothic fiction. You know this. Anything that's compared to The Bear and the Nightingale, I'm a little bit scared of, but always curious about. Moving on to March 5th, we're going to start off with a YA fantasy. This is called The Poison We Drink by Bethany Baptiste. In a country divided between humans and witchers, Venus Stoneheart hustles as a brewer making illegal love potions to support her family. So if there's a story where there's witches versus humans, I'm down for it. And in this case, our main character, Venus, she brews love potions to support her family. And as she does that, you sacrifice a little bit of yourself every time. And if you're caught doing it, you could be sent to prison or to death. Then one day, her mother is killed by the enemy, and the Grand Witcher comes up to Venus and offers her a deal where she can get revenge on her mother's killer. But to do so, she has to start brewing poisons that will kill some of DC's most powerful elite. So this is like an urban fantasy. Obviously we're set in DC, and she ends up in the corrupt underbelly and wrapped up in the politics and confusing magic with power. She doesn't know who she can trust, and she's not even sure that she can trust herself and that magic that is inside of her. So sounds amazing. It's getting a lot of great buzz, and this one does have a pre-order campaign. I'll leave all the links. I'm not sure if this is US only. It always depends on whether the bookstores that are connected to these pre-order campaigns will ship internationally, but you get these 4 gorgeous art cards and a signed copy as well. It's always an exciting time when you get a new Simone St. James, and that's what we're getting on March 5th. This is Murder Road, and the more I look into this, the more it really does sound like something that Simone St. James would write. I just love what she does, especially as somebody who doesn't read a lot of thrillers these days. I think that she blends the line between horror and thriller perfectly in a way that works for me, and she always has a paranormal element. This is no different. So we're following a couple who are on their way to their honeymoon, and they're going to a small resort, but they get lost along the way. They end up on this abandoned highway. They see a lone hitchhiker. They pick her up. They quickly realize that blood is seeping from her jacket and a car is following them. They drop off this hitchhiker to the hospital where she later dies, and the police suspect that this couple had something to do with it, and they realize that there has been a string of murders happening on the same highway for years and years, that there have never been a suspect. They have gone unsolved, and this couple are the police only suspects. So in order to clear their names, they're digging into the history of this town, the history of these murders, and they realize that there's something supernatural afoot. Sounds amazing. I love Simone St. James. I don't put a ton of graphic novels on these lists, to be honest with you. I just don't find them very often. But this one sounds adorable, and I think it's middle grade YA. The author's also the artist. I love that. So much talent. So this is called The Baker and the Bard by Fern Hott, and I love the art style here. It's a cozy fantasy adventure, so really that should appeal to me. It says that it's an enchanting, gentle fantasy tale of friendship, determination, and respecting nature. So we're following these 2 friends. I think one works at a local bakery and the other one is doing performances at the local inn. One day a stranger comes in and requests a strange pastry, and the 2 of them set off to find these magical mushrooms or something to make these pastries, and in doing so they stumble upon a mystery. They have noticed that a creature has come into the local farmer's crops and is eating them and then leaving behind this green goo, and they stumble upon this. They decide to go on this adventure. They make friends with these furry creatures and their caretaker, who happens to be a fae, and they're trying to save them from being displaced. So I think this looks really, really cute. I love a good cozy graphic novel. I really learned that last year after I read The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich, so definitely one I'm going to keep my eye on. Then we have a sequel to a book that I read in February and you haven't heard my thoughts on yet, but no surprise, I loved it. So this is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. I read the first book, Before I Let Go, in February. Adored it. I love everything Kennedy Ryan does. This is probably one that you can read out of order because each of the books in the series follows a different friend. So in the first book, you're following a woman and she is friends with the character in this book, and that is Soledad. And you get a little bit of insight into her marriage in that first book and how it's not great, and you get an idea of her character. Now Soledad is somebody who keeps a lot of lists, is very organized, like calls herself a domestic goddess, always has the perfect recipe and things like that. So when her marriage falls apart, she's not ready for it, and there's a lot of deceit there, but she doesn't have time to grieve because she has to take care of her daughters and support the family. And through this process, she rediscovers herself, and I think she has a bit of a relationship with somebody who's forbidden. We can get behind a forbidden romance. I'm not sure why this person's forbidden, but I'm curious to find out, and I love everything Kennedy Ryan does. She really writes heartfelt romances that are tackling difficult themes, so I know that this book will be no exception, and I'm curious to see Soledad's story. And then we have another romance. This is Kil Trip by Alexandra Kiley. This is set in Scotland, if you could not tell by the cover and the title. And this is following a woman who works for a travel agency. I think she's like a travel influencer or something. And she will go all around the world except to Scotland because she's got some emotional baggage when it comes to that area. But in order to save her job, she has to go there, and she's helping a family-run tourist company who's struggling to get their business back in order. And we're following, I think it's Logan, who's part of this family, and he doesn't like that she's coming here. He really loves to share the hidden gems of Scotland, and he doesn't want her to just start showing all the tourist traps and things like that. And she's always behind her desk. She never leaves and experiences Scotland for herself. So they have like an enemies to lovers thing going on. And one day he finds faded Polaroids of her mother in Scotland and starts to realize the reason why she doesn't love Scotland and the connection that she has to it. So he makes this private tour for her where he takes her to all these places that her mom is in the pictures. I think that sounds adorable. And who doesn't love a romance set in Scotland? And there is a pre-order campaign for this one. If you buy from Boulder Bookstore, you will get a map, and you will also get these 2 adorable stickers of these Highland cows. They are the cutest thing I ever did see. I want those for my laptop to put on the back of my phone, on my water bottle. I just think those are the cutest things ever. Then we have a bit of a YA horror / mystery. You know I love those. And this one is One Last Breath by Ginny Myers Sain. And this says that it's a chilling supernatural thriller filled with murder, romance, and a decades-long murder mystery that haunts a small Florida town. This book follows True, who lives in a small Florida town, and she is kind of haunted by the deaths of these 2 girls. Even though she didn't know them, one of them she feels a deep connection to, like she could feel her in her bones, and her own sister dies, and she's supposed to go away to college with her boyfriend, but something about the town and these murders keeps her there. And then one day a strange girl comes to town who was also feeling a connection to these murders and wants to investigate their deaths. So the 2 of them start to work together. They have this attraction to one another as well. And then somebody is stalking them, and they have a feeling that the killer is back in town. Something about it screams summer thriller to me, and I love a YA thriller in the summertime, so one I might save to read on the beach. But there is a pre-order campaign, and you can get this cute deluxe compact mirror, which is different for a pre-order campaign. It's US only. I will leave all the links down below. This next one I actually have an audiobook arc of, which I do want to listen to because it's historical fiction that seems to follow many years, and that is just something that always appeals to me and I don't prioritize enough. And this is The Great Divide by Christina Henrique. It's an epic novel of the construction of the Panama Canal, casting light on the unsung people who lived, loved, and labored there. So we're following a pretty big cast of characters. One is a local fisherman who has a lot of pride in his country and doesn't like that foreigners are coming here to steal the land. Then his son, Omar, who signs up to be a digger on the excavation, which is upsetting to his father, but he had a pretty isolated childhood and he's thinking that this job will help him find connection. And then we're following Ada, who's 16 years old. She is from Barbados and she's a stowaway to Panama looking for a new life and a job to help make money for her sister's surgery. And she sees Omar collapse one day at the job and she runs to save him. And then another man who is a brilliant scientist who's actually looking for the cure to malaria sees her, and his wife is very ill, and he sees Ada's bravery and her compassion, so he hires her to be his wife's caretaker. And the story unravels from there, and we see how they all are connected to one another, and I just love stories like that. Very character driven and a part of history that I know nothing about. Moving on to March 12th, we have another sequel, and this is Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. This is the sequel to The Space Between Worlds, which I actually started to read in February, was loving it, but I only had the audiobook, and I know I need a physical to really appreciate it, so waiting for that one. And this is following Scales, who is an enforcer in Ashtown, which I know is the same town as in book 1. And it is her job to protect her people and to keep the peace, but one day a woman is mangled and murdered in front of her eyes, but there was no murderer. She didn't see who actually did it. It was like an invisible killing, and this continues to happen in Ashtown and in the more wealthy city that we hear about in book 1 as well. So she is hired to find who did it, which is impossible because how do you find an invisible killer? And she has to work with her by the books partner and a brilliant scientist. And of course they come upon some corruption and it goes deeper than they ever thought it would. So excited to try that one. Excited to finally read book 1 when I get a physical copy. Next up is The Head Witch of Foxhall by Anna Bright. One of the best covers of the year. The more you look at the cover, the more you see. I didn't even notice there was a dragon in it. That intrigues me so much. And this is actually a standalone fantasy romance, and it says that a rebellious witch undertakes a last-ditch quest to restore magic to medieval Wales. as two princes vie for her heart. And in order to fuel her magic, she takes as much as nature can spare, but the same can't be said for the powerful witches of the Coven of Foxhall. They are taking and taking so much to fuel the magic that nature is actually dying, and dragons have disappeared, and magic is not as powerful as it once was. And then we're following a prince who hates magic, would love for magic to die out, but then through a series of circumstances, he actually needs to work with a witch, and everybody in the coven has rejected him. So he obviously meets up with our main character, and they have a brewing attraction to one another. He is vying for the throne, but so is his brother, who also is attracted to our main character. So they have a little bit of a love triangle going on there. I wonder who she'll pick. I am actually very, very intrigued by that, and it's a witchy book. So, and there's dragons. So what else do you need to know? Then we have another fantasy romance called The Feather So Black by Lyra Celine. This one's actually inspired by Celtic mythology, and it is a magical tale of a defiant changeling, her cursed sister, and the dangerous Fey Lord she must defeat to save her family. So we're following Fia, who is a changeling, and she was left behind by like the wicked Fey folk when they kidnapped the queen's daughter, so the princess, and the queen raises Fia as her daughter, even though she has this Fey blood, and trains her to become a spy. And then when she's older, her mother sends her to the Fey world to save the princess. She brings the prince along with her, and it gets complicated because the prince is promised to the princess and is now Fia's best friend, and they have an attraction to one another. But she quickly realizes she also has a pull towards the Fey Lord who kidnapped the princess. So that is messy, and I'm here for it. Next is Rainbow Black by Maggie Thrash, and I love the first line of the synopsis. It says it's part murder mystery, part gay international fugitive love story, set against the 90s satanic panic and spanning 20 years in the life of a young woman pulled into its undertow. That sounds perfect, like exactly the kind of horror that works for me. And they don't tell you much else in the synopsis. It follows a woman named Lacey who grew up in an idyllic childhood with her hippie parents until one day in the 90s they are murdered during this whole satanic panic, and they are treated unfairly, accused of horrible crimes, and as the stress builds up, she commits an act that she can't move on from, and it's haunted her for 20 years. I know Steve Kavanaugh is a pretty popular thriller author, and as I said, I'm not a huge thriller reader these days, but I've always been drawn to his books, and people have been getting e-arcs and early copies of this book and have been loving it. It's called Kill for You, Kill for Me. So it obviously has a trope where two strangers meet, they both want to seek revenge on somebody, so they decide to kill for one another, and that's very Hitchcock. I think this one is Hitchcock inspired. So we're meeting these two women who meet by happenstance. They share a drink, and they're discussing their loneliness and how they wanted to destroy the lives of the men who destroyed their families, and they decide, I'll kill for you, you kill for me. And then at the same time, we're following another woman. This is all set in New York, and her house is invaded when she's home alone, and she's attacked by a man with piercing blue eyes, and those piercing blue eyes are haunting her, and we'll see how those stories connect. I'm not sure. So interesting. I've heard good things about him as a thriller author. Next is Anniebot by Sierra Greer, which is another book I have an audiobook copy of, and I'm so intrigued by because it sounds like the kind of weird sci-fi that I love. There's something about science fiction that explores AI and the ethics and morals behind that, and like of robots and AI becoming kind of sentient, that really appeals to me, and this is no different. Anniebot, in this case, is like a robot girlfriend. She has been made to fulfill her owner's emotional and physical needs, and she forms this connection with her owner, and he thinks that she is the perfect girlfriend. But as she goes on, she wants to start becoming more human, and she's exploring more human emotions and experiences, and through that process she's becoming less and less perfect, and I think that affects their relationship. And I just think all the themes that are being explored in that are really compelling, and just everything that I love exploring in AI type fiction. So curious about that one. Love the cover, sounds fantastic. Then we have some YA fantasy. This is The Last Blood Carver by Vanessa Lee. And apparently this has a unique medical magic system, which is new for me. Curious about that one, and it's set in a Vietnam-inspired fantasy world. So our main character is a blood carver, and that means she's a cold-hearted, ruthless being who can alter human biology with just a touch. So in this world, she's not seen as a healer, she's seen as a killer. And then during some kind of botched medical appointment, she's discovered she's taken by the family of an aristocrat, and she has to heal the last witness to the father of this family's murder. So that's intriguing for sure. And of course she gets wrapped up in this whole world. She has an interesting relationship with the physician aide that she's working with, and she discovers that maybe he's not exactly who she thinks he is, and there's like a weird connection to her past with this murder and this whole family. Sounds complicated, but I'm really intrigued by just the blood carver aspect of this one in general. We're getting a new book from Mindy McGinnis, who I haven't read from in a while, but I really do like what she does in YA, and this one's called Under the Red Rock. It says Neely's monsters don't always follow her rules, so when a little girl under her bed, the man in her closet, and the disembodied voice that shadows her every move becomes louder, she knows she's in trouble. Ooh, chills just from that alone. So Neely goes to these caverns. It's the only place where she can get away from these monsters, and there she meets this girl named Mila, and they have a connection and become quick friends and maybe something more. But one night they get into drugs, and during this, Neely starts to hallucinate, and she wakes up, and Mila is found dead in these caverns, and she has to admit that she doesn't have a lot of memories from that night. And I'm assuming the monsters come into this one. Mindy McGinnis always tackles difficult subjects in her books, so obviously this one is no exception. Then we have another YA horror slash mystery, and this one is by Frida Abike-Ayamende, who wrote Ace of Spades, which is a book I really liked. And this one is called Where Sleeping Girls Lie. And this is a dark academia, like boarding school book, which appeals to me and I know will appeal to a lot of you as well. This follows Sade, who is attending this prestigious boarding school. She's in her third year of high school, but she has been homeschooled previously, and her first night there, her roommate goes missing. And nobody seems that concerned about it. They think she had something to do with it, but nobody's really looking into it. She catches the attention of this group of girls who is collectively called the Unholy Trinity, but she ends up working with her roommate's best friend to look into the disappearance, and she finds all the dark secrets of the school. I love a dark academia vibes. I like a YA mystery, so I have high hopes for this one, especially since I liked something by the author previously. And there are actually 2 pre-order campaigns for this one. So one of them is for this character art print with all the characters on there, which is really cool. You have until March 19th to do that one. And then if you buy from a list of indie bookstores, I will leave the list down below, you will get this free laptop sticker, which is also really cool, and it's obviously of the boarding school itself, so I'm into those. Lee Mandello has a new book coming out. Lee Mandello, I loved Summer Sons, did not love Feed Them Silence, but I'm really hopeful for this one because I just love the way that he writes and what he does with horror. Very thought-provoking, and this one's called The Woods All Black. This is equal parts historical horror, trans romance, and a blood-soaked revenge, all set in the 1920s Appalachia. It says Leslie Bruin is assigned to the backwoods township of Spark Creek by the Frontier Nursing Service under its usual mandate: vaccinate the flock, birth babies, and weather the judgments of churchy locals who look at him and see a failed woman. Forged in the fires of the Western Front and reborn in the cafes of Paris, Leslie believes he can handle whatever is thrown at him, but Spark Creek holds a darkness beyond his nightmares. It is a story of passion, prejudice, and power. An Appalachian period piece that explores reproductive justice and bodily autonomy, the terrors of small-town religiosity, and the necessity of fighting tooth and claw to live as who you truly are. Apparently this next one is for fans of Becky Chambers, and if anybody is a Becky Chambers fan, I am. So this is Cascade Failures by L.M. Sagas. It features a fierce, messy, chaotic space fam, vibrant worlds, and an exploration of the many ways to be and not to be human. So definitely giving me Becky Chambers vibes just from that alone. So this obviously follows a ragtag crew on a spaceship, and it says that they are in over their heads responding to a distress call from an abandoned planet. They find a mass grave, a live programmer who knows how it happened. The Trust has plans. This isn't the first dead planet, and it won't be the last, unless the crew of the Anniebot can stop it. Exactly my vibe of space opera. That is the kind of thing I adore, so yeah, that's gotta be high on my list. Now we have another cozy sci-fi. We've had a lot of cozy fantasy over the last couple of years, obviously, and I support it. I love it. It's my favorite thing. But I'm so here for more cozy sci-fi because I love sci-fi so much. Make it cozy. It's going to be my favorite thing. I adore it. So this is Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. And this is a novel that tells the story of misfits, rebels, found family, and a mystery that spans the stars. So truly this just follows a floating hotel that travels from planet to planet, and it's like a luxury hotel. And there are a lot of elite on board and things like that, but there are also Imperial spies. There's also a lot of drama. Everybody on board, including the staff, has secrets, and I just love the whole premise of this. So at the center of these interweaving lives and interlocking mysteries stands Carl, one-time stowaway, long-time manager, devoted caretaker to the hotel. It's the love of his life and the only place he's ever called home. But as forces beyond Carl's comprehension converge on the Abiona, he has to face one final, when is it time to let go? Moving on to March 26th, the first one we have is The Emperor and the Endless Palace by Justinia Wong. Across these seemingly unrelated timelines, woven together only by the twists and turns of fate, two men are reborn, lifetime after lifetime. So if you like that kind of story, this might be a good one for you. Within the treacherous walls of an ancient palace and the boundless forests of the Asian wilderness to the heart-pounding cement floors of the underground rave scene, our lovers are inexplicably drawn to each other, constantly tested by the worlds around them. So it's a love story that takes place through the years and in different times, and I kind of love that. It says that it's a romantic thriller that challenges everything we think we know about true love. I think that's adorable. I don't think I would have looked at that cover and thought that it was such like a deep love story, but I can definitely get into it. Next is How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. We're getting a lot of books like this that are being compared to Knives Out or the Thursday Murder Club, and this is definitely one of those. It's a fun mystery about a woman who spends her entire life trying to prevent her foretold murder, only to be proven right 60 years later. When she is found dead in her sprawling country estate, now it's up to her great niece to catch the killer. I think that's probably all you need to know about that one. But I do enjoy these more cozy mysteries that still have some stakes to them and that do give you that Knives Out plot with some great characters. And you can just look at that cover and know that that's what you're going to get from this one. We're also getting a new book from K. Crumb this month. Another YA author who has so much talent and who I haven't read from in a while. And this one is called Icarus. So in this story, obviously Icarus is an art thief and he has one target. And he replaces these priceless art pieces with his father's impeccable forgeries, so nobody ever knows. And he gets in and out quickly. He's never been caught until one night he is caught by the person who he's stealing from, his son, who is under house arrest. And instead of turning him in, they kind of have this connection and it becomes a romance. That sounds really, really interesting. I think K. Crumb is great at taking classic stories and making them these like modern contemporary romances where you can still see the inspiration, and I have a feeling this will be no different. Just a few more. We have Dead Girls Walking by Sam Ellis. We need more YA horror slashers. That's like my favorite thing to read in the summertime. I live for them. And this is about a girl searching for her dead mother's body at a summer camp that was once her serial killer father's home. So follows Temple, whose father was a famous serial killer. He was the North Point killer, has been responsible and confessed to 20 murders, and she never believed that he was responsible for her mother's death, but he does confess to it while on death row. And she decides to go back to the home where this all happened, where they lived, where they grew up, but that has been sold and is now a summer camp. And it's actually like an overnight summer camp for queer horror obsessed girls, and she decides to go there and pretend to be a camp counselor, and that night she goes into the forest trying to dig up her mother's body. But then another girl's body turns up dead in the woods, and she realizes that maybe her father wasn't the only monster who lived there. The Boyfriend Subscription by Steven Salvatore. This is apparently a Pretty Woman retelling. I don't think I've ever read a Pretty Woman retelling, but I love the idea of that. What happens when a simple deal gets complicated? That is a tagline. So follows Teddy, who just got divorced. He has to close his plant business, and he goes to a dive bar to drink his sorrows and realizes that he has to leave New York behind, and then his dreams just start coming true, and then a really attractive stranger walks into the bar. And that stranger happens to be Cole, and he's an entrepreneur. He created an app called Versatile that allows sex workers and their clients to form real connections. But he's in this position where he needs a boyfriend to present himself in a more traditional relationship for a potential investor. So he makes a deal with Teddy to pretend to be his boyfriend in exchange for money to keep his business going and all that. And obviously they have a romance, and they're very, very different from one another, and I love it. Sounds amazing. Last but not least, we have Diolo by Jennifer Thorne. This follows Anna, who is like the black sheep in her family, but she has to go on this family vacation with her sister and her sister's family, who all just toe the line with her twin brother and his new boyfriend, and her mom and dad, and they think that they'll go to this villa and find peace and quiet, but it says things start going off the rails. The strange noises at night, the unsettling warnings from the local villagers, and oh, the dark, violent past of the village itself. This is beautifully unhinged and deeply satisfying. It's a sharp twist on the classic haunted house story, exploring loneliness, belonging, and the seemingly inescapable bonds of family mythology. And I love that the warning on here says it may invoke feelings of irritation, dread, and despair that come with large family gatherings. So it's like kind of a campy horror, it seems like, with a haunted house story, but the real horror, the real drama is about having to spend so much time with your family. So I think that could be really interesting and campy, as I said. So I love horror that explores themes like that, and I was like a haunted house story. So those are all the books that are on my radar in March. Let me know if I missed any that you're really excited for, if I introduced you to new books to add to your TBR, if you'll be pre-ordering any of these. Get excited for Realmathon, lots of content, lots of live sprints coming. Keep a look on my community tab because I will post when I am joining sprints and things like that on other channels. Check out Cassidy's announcement video, all the things. So thank you again for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.